Venkatesan, joining from India. Kevin is here also. The title of the session is Global Trends in Digital Infrastructure and Cybersecurity Part 2. Session moderator is my colleague from Georgia Tech Cyber, Mr. James Hoadley. He's an associate director of Georgia Tech Cyber, and we have been working probably 10, 12 years in producing these kind of events, and I really appreciate Jim and John's participation and support. Jim, please take it away.
So yeah, the title of our session is Global Trends in Digital Infrastructure and Cybersecurity. And I just wanted to say that by this point, you're probably tired of hearing stories about how the pandemic has changed everything. But I have to make another one because I found some information that I think would be useful. So COVID-19 has taken digital transformation and given it a firm shove forward. The digital research firm Celerity found that 2/3 of organizations were forced to speed up digital transformation and invest more in technology due to the pandemic. And half of all firm leaders admitted that digital transformation was not a strategic priority before the pandemic, but it is now. I didn't see the underlying data on that, so I wonder, half admitted that it wasn't a priority before, but it is now, and probably the other half, it was already a priority and they've just increased the importance of it, is my assumption. I don't think there's very many people left on the fence feeling that digital transformation is not important. So we have two speakers, as Ani has said, to speak with us today. I think, Kevin, are you going first, or is it Ravi? It's Kevin. Okay, so first is Kevin Thames, Vice President of the Americas Channel for Equinix. Kevin has been with Equinix for over 10 years and has a wealth of experience in the space, and I will let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that, James, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So as you said, I'm Kevin Thames. I'm the Vice President of America's Partner Sales, and I'm going to be sharing with you today the Global Interconnection Index, which is in its 5th volume. And it's really about measuring the growth of the global digital economy. But before that, I'd like to just kind of center us a little bit on a few things. So my title there is America's Partner Sales Vice President. And when I embarked on a career in sales, I was the first generation of my family to go to college, and my dad was an auto mechanic. And so for a little bit, he had to sell his customers on him providing auto mechanic services. And what he said to me as a piece of advice was, son, whatever you do, be a man of service. So my hope today is that I can be a service to you by sharing this information on the Global Interconnection Index. All right, so this is the purpose of our company. So I work for a company called Equinix. It's a Fortune 500 provider of data center services as well as digital services. And our purpose is to be the platform where the world comes together, enabling the innovations that enrich our work, life, and planet. And if you summarize that a little bit, it really comes down to leaving everybody that we touch and everything we touch a little bit better than how we found it. All right, and this is our mission. It's to power the world's digital leaders. And we do that every single day in every single way. And so what we provide is, as I said, global data centers. We have over 240 around the globe, everywhere from Massachusetts to Manchester in the UK to Mumbai in India. And what we do, so it touches you, all of us. So I would say, when I describe what I do to my family or people on the plane or whatever, it's really everything on your phone goes back to the data centers that we own. So we're in the midst of this digital transformation. And what I'd like to share with you is the next slide, which is the GXI. So the GXI is the standard for measuring the growth of the digital economy. And it's in our 5th volume. And back 5 years ago, when we started this in 2017, we forecasted that we would be at a certain level of gigabits. So it is, 1 second, please. So we forecasted that that interconnection bandwidth would grow by 4,991 terabytes globally. And We didn't forecast that there would be a pandemic in there, but I'm proud to say that we got the forecast pretty correct. We were 98.8% correct. It came out at 4,933 terabytes in 2021. Click over to the next one, please. All right, so what's behind the GXI data? So it's 500 global companies that we work with and 5,000 implementations over the last few years. It's been a 5-year journey, as I mentioned earlier, and it's Fortune 500, Global 2000, 44% of the companies that represent this data are in the Fortune 500 and the Global 2000, and it's a global nature. So it's 42% of the organizations that participated in the data come from the US and the Americas, 36% from EMEA, and 22% from AP. And it's not just data from Equinix data centers, it's data from all data centers. So we look at our competitors, we look at the whole data center industry to pull this interconnection data. Click over to the next one, please. All right, so I'm sure you've heard this over the last 2 days. The time for digital first is now. You know, if there was a time for the bold leap to digital first, it is absolutely now. A digital first strategy goes well beyond just cloud first, and it's about digital first. Click over to the next one, please. And as many of you know, practitioners in the business, CIOs, CTOs, hybrid cloud is a given, but ecosystems and edge will matter most. It's all about getting to that end user, whether it's a device or a person or a thing, a car, what have you. It's all about pushing that data all the way out to the edge. And as a service is the preferred private cloud choice everywhere. Click over to the next one. Thank you. And entire industries are rethinking their business from edge to cloud. Interconnection bandwidth is forecast to be 15x larger than the internet. And when we talk about interconnection bandwidth, it is literally two entities passing traffic between each other in a direct fashion at WAN speeds versus LAN speeds. So if you think about it, Netflix, for instance, has relationships with Disney, and they transfer data inside our data centers every single day from a direct connection. So literally one piece of cable from Netflix's cage to Disney's cage. And that's how you get the content that you get in your home every single day. Click over to the next one. All right, so interconnection bandwidth is forecast to grow to 485 terabits by 2024, driven by the need to re-architect for digital. And so that's 44% growth for interconnection bandwidth, and it's 85 zettabytes of data exchanged annually. And as the number of devices and amount of data transferred grows exponentially, you know, 1 trillion devices will be connected to the internet by 2030. So it's just an explosion of data. And it drives the need to re-architect for many CIOs and CTOs around the world to re-architect to an interconnection-oriented architecture where they go from siloed and centralized to distributed and interconnected. Next one, please. All right, so components of digital infrastructure are real simple. Digital services, it's all about interconnecting the digital core. What we found is being cloud adjacent is the new on-prem. So many of our customers come to us and they say, I want to go as much cloud as possible, but there are certain things that just don't fit into the cloud nicely. So what they do is they put them in our data centers and they connect directly to Microsoft and AWS and Google and Oracle and all of those various cloud platforms, literally at LAN speeds. And then digital participation is all about integrating digital ecosystems. So if you think about it, banking, insurance, manufacturing, they're passing traffic between communities of interest that make sense to them, and they're using services within our data centers. And then finally, digital proximity, interconnecting at the digital edge. And this is where you bridge the physical and the virtual world. Next slide, please. All right, so some of the macro trends that we're seeing, is customers building digital presence by digitizing the back office to support their digital business throughput while sustainably scaling as a service, recurring revenue, and flexible consumption models. That's all the cloud first as a service stuff that you've heard over the last few years. It's happening all the time. And as I said earlier, digital participation is about bringing together communities of interest, organizations that make sense to trade traffic quickly and efficiently at very low latency places of doing so. And then finally, establishing physical infrastructure for a digital front office, enabling operations intelligence and to support localized and personalized delivery to customers, employees, and operations where business happens. Next one, please. All right, and all organizations are solving for this. It comes down to digital core, digital edge, and ecosystems. As I said, it really makes sense. So one of our clients is a retailer, and I won't mention the name, but it's a big box retailer. And what it comes down to is the collaboration between many different organizations to make this happen. So we don't solve all of our customers' problems. Those problems are solved by many different technology companies. So for instance, if you've ever wandered around a big box store looking for something, and then you remember that you have an app on your phone, and you click on that app and you say, okay, this item is in aisle 23, row 7. That's something that happens at Equinix, but it happens with various different parties. So it happens with Microsoft's cloud, it happens with Google's cloud, it happens with AT&T's network. And one of the things that we do is we bring together all of those parties in order to make this happen for our customers. Next slide, please. All right. And one of the things that we see is 65% of executives have reported that their current infrastructure is struggling to support the rapid adoption of digital technologies. And I like to say the other 45% probably were asleep in meetings because everybody is struggling with us. Continue to the next one. And then half of the C-suite executives admit that they do not know where to start when developing their transformation strategy. Even us, right? All of us can grow. Equinix is looking for a chief transformation officer to help us continue our digital journey. All of us are in this together, and we're all on this journey at the same exact time. All right, so at Equinix, we power digital leaders. Click to the next one. All right, and these are just some use cases that we've seen. So healthcare, to deliver continued improvements to the world's healthcare will need to be transformed with digital playing a central role. These are direct quotes from our clients. You know, Fiserv is a customer which is trying to deliver superior value for our clients through leading technology, targeted innovation, and excellence in everything we do. So this is a slide that basically said this is hitting every single entity on the planet. And it's also hitting every single industry. Click over to the next one. All right. And then finally, this is a manufacturing slide. So driving innovation that makes the world healthier, safer, smarter, and more sustainable requires being digital ready. Final slide, I believe. All right, there's two more. This is a kind of a little bit of a deep dive into manufacturing. So what this looks like on a global basis, when we look at our manufacturing customers, on average, they're in 6 different metro areas around the globe. And on average, they have 195 cabinets with us where they're focusing on their digital transformation. And the interesting thing is the interconnections. So a manufacturer will have 190 different interconnections that they're prosecuting every single day. And if you look at it in the core, it's 59% going to the network service providers. They're trying to get their data out to the world. But another portion of it, 21%, is transactions with IaaS providers, infrastructure as a service providers, the cloud providers, folks like that. And then another 20% is doing business with their business suppliers inside their supply chain. And the average number of partners that they're working with are 27. As I said before, we're just a small piece of this digital transformation puzzle. And many of our customers end up transaction with many of their partners within Equinix data centers. And then if you look over to the edge, go back one real fast. If you look over to the edge, it's a similar story. 6 metros that they're deploying in, 110 cabinets on average, and 90 connections, even in those edge locations. Click over to the final one. All right. And with that, I'd just like to share with you that the report is available for all to see. And if you can download the report and learn a little bit more about EMEA, globally, APAC, and all of these digital trends, it's here for you. The URL is there. You could just do a search on Equinix GXI report and it will come up in Google as well. All right. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Next, joining us from India is Ravi Venkatesan. Am I close?
That's pretty good, James. And hello, everyone. It's
right.
It's nice to be with you all. I'm Atlanta-based, but currently enjoying a little bit of downtime in India. Although it's I got more than one of these late evening calls from here. But look, what I want to do is, instead of I'm sure you're going through your fair share of PowerPoints today. So I'm going to keep this PowerPoint free so that you can not just listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth, but feel what I feel about this topic, right? And I want to share just 2 specific trends around digital infrastructure with you, and also 2 specific trends around cybersecurity, and what's the what and the so what of those trends, right? So let's get to digital infrastructure first. And a lot of times I have this conversation about what the hell's digital anyway, and why should somebody care? And the way I like to tell the story is, look, what does Facebook changing its name to Meta, Amazon launching Amazon Go, and vending machines have to do with each other? 3 seemingly very, very different things, and yet they give us a glimpse into what the future is bringing, right? On the one side, Facebook going to Meta represents this concept that the digital universe is actually a thing. There is a world that we plug into every time I pick up my phone and check Facebook, check messages, check email. I'm plugging into a digital universe, which is distinct today from my physical universe. When I set that phone down and I start interacting with another human being physically, it's a distinct interaction. What Facebook is signaling is those lines are blurring, those worlds are blurring. And for those of you who've seen the movie Ready Player One, get ready, right? So that's one. What does that have to do with these other things, right? Let's look at Amazon Go now. Amazon is the company that invented e-commerce at scale, right? That showed the world that you could shop for everything that you can imagine online, get it delivered, pick it up, what have you. And now, so in some ways, they were the anti-retail physical shopping. And yet, now they have these physical stores, but they are not, as they say, that's not your granddad's physical store. It's a store where you go in and you just grab, scan, and go, right? It's grab, scan, go. There is no queue. There is no, clerk that's helping you check out. There's none of that stuff. It's a different way of shopping that, again, blends the best of what you would consider a digital experience of shopping with physical. You're going there, you're putting your phone against a product, you're seeing descriptions of the product, so you're now blending digital experiences and physical experiences, right? Now you get to vending machines, which is the business the company that I serve is in. We are the market leaders in all unattended retail. So our company's name is Cantaloupe. We are NASDAQ listed. We do about 200 million this year and are on Russell 2000 as well. And what we power is laundromats, amusement parks, EV chargers, vending machines, anything where you can shop for something without a clerk having to help you. And what we are noticing is that even things like kiosks are now replacing cafeterias in office buildings. So you can grab your sandwich and you can grab your soda for lunch, scan it at a kiosk and go. We call them micro markets. So what's happening? The trend that all these three different things, Meta, Amazon Go, our micro markets and vending machines, all these things represent a trend, which is the lines are blurring between physical and digital infrastructure, right? And this has massive consequences about how we think about our businesses. And, back to what Kevin covered, the explosion that's going to happen in terms of data and IoT devices and connected, because now you're taking two universes and you're bringing them literally together. So the amount of interconnections and cross connections is going to just go through the roof. And how do we prepare for it, right? Within our businesses is start thinking about a phygital strategy, right? You'll hear this term phygital a lot, or meta is the more cool and sexy way of saying it. But get ready for the metaverse, because it's going to come faster than we can imagine. So that's one trend. And that's one sort of response strategy that I want to leave you with. The other trend in digital infrastructure, which actually, is very relevant to what Kevin covered, and Equinix plays a huge role in it, is people are going away from, hey, there was this trend of, I'm going to run everything on the prem. And then there was this trend of anything that's sensitive, I'm going to run it on a prem or colo it in a cage. And then the rest of the stuff, which is not that sensitive or strategic, I'm going to move it to the cloud. Now it's getting even more complex. Now I want multi-cloud. I don't want to just be on AWS or just be on Azure, because who knows what's going on and who knows how their service levels will go up and down. And yes, they do. And I want to be as cloud agnostic as possible. And if I have pieces in two different places, I want them connected, and I want them connected at speed, which, by the way, Equinix is the market leader that does that. And so this concept of, when you think about the architecture of the IT infrastructure or application infrastructure that supports your business, think about not putting all your eggs in one basket. And especially with startups, I see a trend to say, hey, I'm going to be on Azure. I'm going to use all of the services that Azure provides. And 2 years later, for whatever reason, a new version of SQL Server came out, which you don't like, which broke everything, and now you're stuck, right? So think as agnostic and as multi-cloud as possible. And the technologies that are out there now really, really make that easier. So that's the second trend, which is we moved from prem-based to public cloud to hybrid cloud to now it's multi-cloud, right? And it is possible, and it's possible to architect that way if you think about it from the very, very beginning. So those are two on the digital infrastructure side. Now let's shift to cybersecurity, right? And cybersecurity tends to be this, these days it tends to be such a pessimistic topic. Every session I attended is all, or speak at, a lot of times it's gloom and doom, and everybody is talking about what's broken and how it can never be fixed, and there's just no hope. And today I want to give you a little bit of a different perspective, right, across three trends, which I think are very positive. Number one is open source intelligence. So this phenomenon of OSINT, as it's called in the cybersecurity parlance, is becoming really, really popular now. And there are products like Risk Recon, which is from MasterCard, which is one of the multiple products that sort of encapsulate open source intelligence that can look at your infrastructure without you having to install any software, without you having to install any agents, nothing. You just kind of sign up, and it'll tell you a variety of things that are open in your infrastructure and that are attack vectors for hackers and bad actors. And not just externally, sometimes it'll give you clues into what internal gates are open and what insider threats you might face. So that is an emerging trend, and I would really encourage anybody who's listening to this to check into open source intelligence and any tools that encapsulate it and how your business could benefit it, right? That's one trend. The second trend I want to talk about is SecOps as a service, right? So a lot of organizations, especially, companies like our size, which are small caps or private companies that are, I would say sub 500 people, right? They struggle with, hey, I just don't have the wherewithal to go put, 20 people in a room or even 10 people in a room and pay them the dollars that cybersecurity professionals command today and set up a security operations center. just can't afford it. And I also cannot afford leaving all these gates open and leaving my business vulnerable to a breach or a ransomware attack, and all of which are now getting more and more and more accelerated. So what do? Well, look into companies that are offering security operations center as a service. You'd be surprised at how cost effective these options are and how easily you can sign up for one of them. And, sub 6 figures a year, you could set up something that actually monitors your infrastructure 24/7 and 365 days, and you'll get to a much more peaceful level with knowing that your infrastructure is monitored, right? So that's the second trend, is SecOps as a service. And the first one, which I talked about, was open source intelligence. The third one, which is a little mix of pessimism and optimism on my part. The pessimistic side is cyber insurance and liability insurance in general, driven by cyber insurance, is getting more and more expensive. So now this doesn't matter what size of company you are, and big, small, and between. Everybody's struggling with their renewals for cyber insurance. And what I have noticed, and I've also gathered from a number of other CTOs that I interact with and CIOs, is that you can be in one of two buckets. You can react to it, and you can have either your general counsel come knocking, or your CFO come knocking and say, hey, this renewal is up here, and suddenly all our premiums are going up. What do we do? And then you have an oh shit moment, and there's a fire drill, and everybody's trying to gather all the information about infrastructure and security initiatives and everything, and you're just playing defense at that point. Or there is the other bucket, where know that this is a trend in cybersecurity right now. Insurance premiums are going up and ridiculously high. However, if you are proactive, you get your act together and you put your story together, and say, look, here's where we were 3 years ago, here's where we were 2 years ago, and here's where we are now, and here's our roadmap. And our premiums should be going down because we are much better and much more buttoned up in terms of our security infrastructure. And you take the shot across the bow with your brokers, or through your brokers to your insurance providers. Then you might land at keeping your premiums the same, or they might go up a little less than they would go up, right? So that's kind of the third one I'd love to leave you with. And hopefully these trends and strategies are useful, and it's a little bit of what I would call lashes from the field that I'm sharing. But I hope you benefit from these and enjoyed sharing these insights with you. So thank you, and back to you, James.
Well, thank you, Ravi. Both fascinating presentations, and I had a question that I had originally written for Kevin, but I think I'd like both of you, if possible, to chime in on it. And also, first I want to thank Kevin. I had never heard the expression cloud adjacent before, and I'm like, it just shows that I don't work in the field, but it makes so much sense. But it's one that never occurred to me. So let me go ahead and read for you a brief statement from the Sovereign Tech Fund of the German government, and then I'll ask a question. It's this statement from their website, and I know it's accurate because I just pulled it up. It is a declared goal of the German government to strengthen digital sovereignty, i.e. the self-determined use and design of digital technologies and systems by individuals, private organizations, and the state. Of particular importance here are the foundational technologies of the internet, such as digital infrastructures. The Sovereign Tech Fund supports the development, scaling, and maintenance of digital and foundational technologies. The goal of the fund could be to sustainably strengthen the open source ecosystem with a focus on security, resilience, technological diversity, and the people behind the code. That's first, as an American, that's a really amazing thing to hear. I don't feel like the American government gets that involved in the digital infrastructure of the development of the United States. I feel it's a lot more organic and corporate driven here. So first, if you could comment on that. And second, maybe you could compare and contrast the European approach versus the American approach, and which one, what are the pluses and minuses of both?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, James. Yes, so we have 7 data centers throughout Germany. And what we find is that there is a drive by our global customers to deliver all of their services 100% in Germany for Germany. And it's driven by the government. And, and then it makes global kind of deployments a little bit of a challenge for them because they have to build it 100% top to bottom in Germany. So this is something that we see, and the US is a lot more free-willed when it comes to allowing the business to do what it does. But it is something that we see all the time. So yeah. Ravi, you got anything from a security perspective?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. One, it's been a pet peeve of mine, and for a decade I've been, on conferences, I always voice this opinion that, look, the way we do cybersecurity is like me putting a security guard outside my house, and the enemy is coming at me with drones and bazookas, and my guard has got a little shotgun, right? So it's just, we're never going to get there. And the governments need to get involved in a big way and start protecting the perimeter in a very, very large manner, because the bad actors that are coming after private corporations in many cases are state sponsored, and we know which nations those are. So it's stupid for individual companies to try and fight big powerful governments. Just never going to ever get there. Now, on the positive side, I think, the US leadership at a government level as well as other levels has come a long way, especially in the last 5 years. Just proximity to Atlanta and being involved in some of the things that are going on in the state of Georgia, Fort Gordon and the Cyber Command there are doing a lot of things in terms of public-private collaboration and setting up a cyber range where companies can go and participate in kind of cyber warfare drills and ransomware simulations and all kinds of things. So I think we have made progress in recognizing that there needs to be help from the government, a more active role played by the government, and then more collaboration. Where we haven't yet got to is to recognize that, look, as things move more digital, the most precious assets are digital assets. And digital assets cannot be protected if you don't consider it as part of your sovereign perimeter and that network. And so, I have no doubt in my mind that over the course of time, our behavior will mimic more of what you're seeing in Europe and frankly, Australia. And, there are several, China, even India. So many countries are moving in that direction where if you're serving businesses there, the data needs to be there, the data needs to be protected there, and physical boundaries are going to become digital boundaries. Again, back to those two universes colliding, right?
I do have a question that's out of chat rather than Q&A. Please use the Q&A tool, but we'll get this one there. It's a question from David Prue. Is Germany going pre-Japan's Meiji era digitally, and are they isolating themselves, and is isolation the answer?
I wouldn't call it isolation. There's an old saying, it says good fences make good neighbors. So this is just all about good fences. It's not about isolation. It's just making sure that, each nation is able to protect what are its most precious assets.
Okay. In terms of my understanding of digital infrastructure is certainly not up to date. I very much enjoyed, I don't know if you've read the 2012 book, Tubes by Andrew Blum.
Yes, it's amazing.
It is fantastic because it's something that you don't think about. Very much related, Ravi, to what you were talking about the intersection of the digital world and the physical world. It's kind of making a parody off of something that the late Senator Ted Stevens said about it being a series of tubes. And the author was actually saying, actually, some ways that's not a bad analogy to think of. What has changed between 2012 in terms of physical and digital space to now that if Andrew Blum were to update that book, what would you suggest that he put in it?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say that it goes back to what Ravi was saying, this metaverse idea and concept of living in two worlds. It is happening to us all day, all the time, and it's only going to happen more, right? When artificial intelligence comes online more, there's just so many different things. So I would say that the book would need a major update. However, I will say there will always be a need for a physical presence, at least the way that infrastructure and chips and servers operate today. There will always need to be that global, consistent kind of delivery platform. And also, one of the things that we will never solve for is physics. So the latency for me to have this conversation and connect with Ravi is just the physics of the globe. So yeah, it's got to be integrated is what it comes down to.
Hey, Ravi, did you have anything to contribute on that, or?
No, other than I'm adding that book to my Blinkist list.
It's a good one. That's a good one.
Careful with Jim, is going to give you a long assignment, a list of books.
Yeah, I just got out of lecturing and I gave a student a couple of reading assignments out of that one.
Speaking of assignments, if I may, Jim, I've just given to my 60 exec MBA students tomorrow evening as required reading your report, Kevin, the Global Interconnection Index. Tell me, how can you use it in practical global strategy, business strategy terms?
Yeah,
I noticed you've got Asia Pacific, EMEA, Americas, and global. How can it be a tool that you can convert into global strategic advice for a firm?
Yes, it really helps firms understand where they should deploy their assets, because there are certain nodes, if you will, or places in the world that are more important than other places in the world when it comes to digital infrastructure. So in the United States, Ashburn, Virginia is literally the bullseye of the America's internet. So if you're serious about being digital, you have to be in Ashburn, because AWS US East is there, Microsoft's East Coast node is there, and it's literally the way it's done. But there's also data of, for instance, where are the financial services companies? They're in New York, they're in Shanghai, they're in London, right? So it provides all that data of where the numbers are and folks are interconnecting, so that organizations can figure out, okay, if I need to play in the financial services space, it makes sense for me to be in London, Shanghai, Amsterdam, New York, right? So it gives that data. So your students will be able to kind of see and play with, and almost like war game, like, where should I put this infrastructure if I needed to connect into these communities?
It's applicable only to digital platforms, digital media. Can you extend it to more physical kind of products as a way to strategize?
Yes, it's the blend of the two, right? Because if you think about it, your iPhone is a physical device on one hand, but it's also a digital device on another. And tying off to what Ravi was talking about, it is going to be, one connected. I don't know if metaverse is the right term, but it's going to be one connected thing where we're blending inside and outside. So there's physical retail stores, for instance, that you can access physically, but at the same time, you can access them digitally. You can pull out your phone and, click a button and see what that specific item that you're looking at costs and what it costs at other locations. So it's really the blending of the two, and we do support all of it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thanks for sharing that with your MBA students. That's amazing.
Took a minute.
I had a question for Ravi related to cybersecurity. That's an issue, of course, particularly ransomware is something that in Atlanta we're particularly acutely aware of. We had the Atlanta city government taken over by ransomware not too long ago. We had the Colonial Pipeline, which is headquartered here in the Atlanta area, taken over by ransomware. I know that, at least in the case of the Colonial Pipeline, many of those ransomers were captured or traced down, and the payments were mostly recovered. And they used to take their payments in Bitcoin, for example, but governments have figured out that Bitcoin and other types of cryptos like that have an open ledger, so you can actually track the transactions. So in response, the ransomers are moving to something like Monero, which is a cryptocurrency that has a higher emphasis on privacy and anonymity. But I saw recently that the Justice Department actually tracked down a bunch of other ransomers who took payment in Monero because the connection between the two wallets, that it was just a matter of that was what they were able to use. But I guess my question is, are governments in general getting better at finding ransomware criminals, or is it, is it a cat and mouse game, and every step that the government gets better, the bad guys get better?
It's both, right? So it's true that the governments are getting better, and they've gone from never having recovered anything and never having caught anybody to being a little bit better than that. But I think the bad guys are several steps ahead, not a step ahead, and there's no option for private companies other than to protect themselves. I actually consider ransomware the #1 threat right now, even ahead of DDoS attacks, and even ahead of data breaches and everything else. And look, what I tell you is run ransomware simulations. We do that. And the second thing is data loss protection. There is no other way to truly secure the future of your company other than make sure that your data loss protection is bulletproof. So if all hell breaks loose, you have a ransomware attack, you cannot counter it. You need to be able to pull the plug in, restore from backup, and go. That is the only, full kind of your real fail safe.
Okay, well, I will take a question from the Q&A, or I'll spin it a little bit based on what you just said, Ravi. So for Kevin and Ravi, what things about ransomware and all of the cybersecurity issues, what keeps both of you awake at night worrying about these particular issues?
Yeah, good question. Thank you for that, James. And I think it was David. The thing that worries me the most is as these worlds collide and connect more deeply, it gives the opportunity for more risk, right? And that's why we have folks like Ravi and other members looking at cybersecurity so much. And that's why we've seen the growth of cybersecurity, just because there are so many different touch points, and we need to be able to interact quickly, but we got to be able to do it securely. And I have a fear around, speed versus security. I'm a speed person. We deliver low latency all across the world every single day. So my concern is just make sure that we don't go too fast where we're not protected. That's my fear.
What keeps me up at night about ransomware in particular is just emails. And it sounds stupid when I say that, but the way I view email security today is it's like I have an amazing shield around everything else. I'm making the walls higher and higher. I'm making them titanium grade and bulletproof in every way possible. And then I have this little, gate that's wide open, right? And that's email. Anybody can get anything through it. Anybody can click on anything through it. So, we train people like crazy on phishing and spear phishing and run a lot of simulations. In fact, our employees often complain about how much of that we do, but that's what keeps me up at night, because it's the weakest link in the chain right now.
Yeah, we go through the same thing here at Georgia Tech. I'm looking at the time. I think I want to end this up on time. I think we got 2 minutes left, Ani, roughly. Yep. Can I ask one last question for Ravi, because you got on an issue that I've done research in, so it's one of my favorite issues. Is you're working in contactless payment. I actually did some research on contactless payment, although it was probably about 5 years ago, so it's probably out of date. In Tokyo, there is a very robust contactless payment infrastructure that's been up and running really since 2009. And it continues to mature and integrate and expand. So basically, you can pay for things with an NFC-based system that is on your phone almost anywhere in the country now, particularly if you're in a metropolitan area. You just wave it and boom, it's done. We're getting that there in the US, but what do we need to get us to the point that we can get to where the Japanese were in 2010?
Yeah, so here, we are the market leader and also the largest provider of devices that do contactless payments in the world, right? Just based on our footprint of point of sale devices that are out there. And we've published some studies around this also, which are available through our website. And just the pandemic actually accelerated contactless payments very significantly by 25 to 30% above where they were. The most ironic part of it was that many people did not know that their cards could actually tap and pay before the pandemic. They just discovered it through the pandemic, right? So that's just a data point. So the infrastructure actually is already pretty much there with EMV. NFC was there even before, but with EMV and the card networks, all of them, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, starting to mandate more and more that it needs to be EMV everywhere. I think we're there. It's just a matter of now, some of the last remnants pulling the plug. And look, with in the future, you will likely see cards not have the mag stripe at all. You'll see cards come out with just a chip and just the ability to tap, and mobile payments have gone up significantly as well. So mobile NFC based payment. And I think the Apple and the Google wallets are going to win compared to sort of blank pay, right? Chase Pay, City Pay type of alternate wallets or super apps, etc. So those are all some interesting trends. I mean, we could talk payments for hours, but that's the short answer I can give you.
I look forward to the future when we can do that, and I'm happy when I can just go to the vending machine downstairs and just tap my card. But it's taken so many years to do that.
Great.
Well, thank you both for your presentation. I can see Ani has given me the signal that it's time to move on to the next. But from everyone, thank you very much for your presentations, and I learned a lot. Hopefully, everybody else did as well. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to Ani so we can move us on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Ravi. Excellent presentations and conversation. I thank you, both of you. Kevin, we thank you and your company to support us for our programs. We appreciate your continued participation. Look forward to your support in our future events too.